Welcome to the notes on order of operations. All right, in this lesson, we're hoping to be able to simplify expressions using there's that phrase, order of operations. So some basic terminology before we get started. The difference between an equation and an expression. All right, an equation has an equal sign. So an example of that would be something like this, like 5x plus 3 equals 18. All right, that is an equation. Whereas an expression does not have the equal sign. So 5x plus 3 is an example of an expression. For an equation, all right, the directions will usually say solve, okay? Whereas the expression, the directions will say simplify, or sometimes it'll say evaluate. So those are the two big differences as we work throughout this unit. I want you guys to know that right now. So now here is the order of operations. There are those letters. You guys have probably seen them before. Some people know them as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So what do they stand for? So the P is for parentheses. All right, and it tells us the order that we go in. So if you see parentheses first, you're going to start there. Now in this section, you're not only going to see parentheses, but you're going to see these things called brackets. Okay, so parentheses or brackets first. And a lot of times you're going to see brackets when you have parentheses inside of those brackets. So you're going to see something like this where inside the brackets you do parentheses first, take care of all this, and then before you continue with the other part of the problem. All right, the next part is exponents. All right, you're going to have some base. All right, that's to some exponent. All right, take care of those exponents first. Then we're going to have obviously multiply. And I'll just kind of put the dot there for multiplication. Again, we know it's just multiply and divide. Now, multiply and divide, those precedents isn't really based. Multiplication is not always before division. These two here, all right, sometimes you will divide before you multiply. That is determined by which comes first as we go left to right. And then finally with addition and subtraction, the same thing is true here. All right, it's not necessarily, always addition first. Subtraction may come first. Again, it's that same idea of when you get down to addition and subtraction, whatever comes first as you go left to right. So there are the order of operations that you're going to use in this section. Now let's get to solving some problems. So there's problem number 1. All right, 7 minus the quantity 5 times 3 plus 3 squared. Well, first thing first is parentheses. So right here. All right, we've got 5 times 3 was inside the parentheses. So we're going to rewrite this as 7 minus. Now, 5 times 3 becomes 15. And then now we can take care of this exponent. Plus 3 squared is 9. Again, 3 squared, that's 3 times 3. The base times however many times, whatever the exponent says, times itself. So at this point, now we only have subtraction and addition. We just work left to right. So we can literally go 7 minus 15, that's negative 8, then plus 9. So our answer is negative 8 plus 9 is 1. So when we evaluate this, that would be at 1. Again, notice order of operations extremely important. Now, before we get on this next example, okay, I want to kind of cover something real quick right here. All right, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see with exponents is when we have something like this where it's negative 3 squared versus when I write it without the parentheses. These mean two very different things, so be aware of this. When you have the parentheses, all right, when something's squared, it means it's whatever's inside the parentheses, whatever the base is. So it's negative 3 times negative 3. Well, a negative times a negative is always positive, so this answer is 9. When you see those parentheses, you see the positive when you're squaring something. All right, parentheses positive. Now this other one, since there's no parentheses, that negative isn't with the 3. The base of this exponent is just the 3. So when we do this, it's 3 squared, which is just 3 times 3, which is 9. But then we have to have that negative sign in front, so that becomes a negative 9. So when there's no parentheses, the base is just the positive number. It doesn't include the subtraction sign in front of it. Why is that important? Because we'll use those skills here in this next example. Okay, so we have no parentheses other than this right here with the exponents, so we can go exponents first. So here, first example, the negative's on the outside, so we do 4 squared, which is 16, but then we have that negative in front. Now the next term, We have the parentheses. So it's -3 times -3, which is +9. And then, of course, we have the +7. So going to be super important to understand those properties with the exponents in parentheses. So then we can add it up. -16 plus 9 is -7. We just work left to right. +7, -7 plus 7 is 0. So this answer here would be 0. And there you have our lesson on evaluating algebraic expressions using those order of operations.